Hey there guys, and welcome back. So we are now on session 9, and I decided to switch gears this time and do the demo for the meeples. I figured that was a good place to start off with instead of moving on to a couple of other things I had listed, only because that helped me, A, establish that everything was working with meeples, and B, give me a groundwork to add to this demo for the other stuff we'll be adding to the colony. So I figured that was a good place. Obviously, as you can see by my session times, had a little bit late nights. Normally I like to start working on stuff closer to 8. This was 9 o'clock, and then this one was 8:35. So preferably if I could get working on them before then, that'd be even better. So for example, back a few sessions, I was consistently getting there around, actually this was the weekend, so this doesn't really count. But point being is that, yeah, 6:45, 7, that way I was done before 9 o'clock and could maybe squeeze in a recap. But that's where we're at, so what we're dealing with today. Let's go ahead and go over the code. So obviously demos. Yeah, I think I'm going to just start with demos, and then I'll work through the other minor changes that happened as we got there. So first off in demos, and let me get you switched over to Visual Studio Code. VS Code, there we go. First thing that happened before we did the demos is I actually reworked demos slightly. So let me go ahead and open up LiteLike here. So now we got a demo box instead of fight box, because obviously we're going to have more than just the fight demo. And that also entails fight box, the combat demo, creating its own fight box. So all I had to do was add this in right here, and then the rest of the code was a-okay, no problems. So as you can see here, Meeple demo. This is all new code, obviously, because we didn't have a demo before. Just clear the demo box, initialize a colony. So that's a very simple, straightforward, function that I added, which is just colony this and 0. So this would be obviously the game, and then 0, I believe, is Meeple. Let me double check that. Power level. There you go. That's right. Power level. So our fire level on the base in the village for a dark room. So that's power level for us. And then the rest of this stuff is blank by default. So that's all that does in the demo. And obviously we set up some stuff. So if I go ahead and run this, I can run this right now. It's not complete like I said, but let me go ahead and run it and we'll show it to you. Oh, that's what I screwed up there. 1 second. Close that back down, and I got to make sure I have the HTML page clicked. Go live. There we go. And let me just get the streaming software set up for that. Or make sure it's set up for that, rather, because chances are it is going to try to show you my YouTube dashboard. Because that's what it always does. Oh no, that's funny. It says the right thing, but it's not actually showing the right thing. That's kind of funny. Alright, so anyway, here we are. So here is the demo page, as we knew about it. And then Meeple demo, here we go. So basically all the code that we're going to look at in VS Code is creating this. So you can see we have provisions, batteries. This is the table right here. So we have this table with resources as an H3, a header 3. Meeple's header 3, and then a table. This is a table header row, and then this is all the table data. Normally in game, you don't see any of this, right? In game, you just have your meeples slotted in as a number of meeples, and then in the background, it's counting up on when you get your next resources. But just because this is a demo, as kind of a debug feature, we're getting to see all the timers for all the meeples. I was considering styling these as, as completion bars, as task bars, whatever you want to call them. But I figured that was unnecessary, and it was also back to it being a bit of a debug mode. Made more sense to have numbers rather than the actual task bars. And obviously we can add more meeples You see that working just fine. And then the quit demo just gets us back to demo over immediately. And then we can obviously start up a combat demo if we want to. So let's hop back over to VS Code. And get myself back over to GitHub. There we are. So VS Code, aside from the demo, so let's look at that really quick. Where'd you go, demo? Demos, there we go. So yeah, this is all the table generation stuff, just very straightforward, create tables. I don't really think I need to go through all that. Yeah, so this is straightforward right here. So add meeples, very simple. Colony, add a new meeple. So if we hop over to colony, that is colony.json. Let's find actual colony. Oh, home base, darn. And sorry if I'm sniffing a lot. The allergies are killing me today. So add new meeples, very simple. Just now utils new meeple with job 0, the very first job that's on the list. And then just add it and return the meeple in case we want to do anything with it. So that's a very simple function right there. This meeple ID and meeple index you'll find if you go through the code up here. And again, this is just a way to track what meeples we have. Normally meeples don't have IDs right now because in game as we have it, we don't actually care about our meeple. But for the sake of the demo, in order to keep things straightforward and transparent, we've got the meeple ID going in there. And then we add it obviously to the GUI. Now, the more important stuff. Update GUI. Update GUI gets set down here. Well, it actually gets set. Where are we at? Update GUI. There we go. And update GUI right here. So event listeners. We're adding event listeners to the to the colony because we had that framework in place for the combat. So I figured may as well just carry over the event listener framework over to colony. Makes sense. Keep our code consistent. So that is what we added. That's one of the big things we added. And I actually went even further and broke, because we had to add event listeners, I went and broke it out into its own class. So if we hop over to utils, we'll get to see how I did that. So down here at event listeners, the event listener class gets events as its parameter, saves those events, and then sets up listeners. This code is all copy pasted. Everything you see here is copy pasted and just modified, with the exception of this very last part right here and that guy from combat. So if we go over to combat, you will now see that combat no longer has those functions. Those functions used to be up here. Now combat extends event listener. We still pass in our event types to to the event listener class, so super combat event types. And then we were passing in this generic object information previously, and we still wanted to keep that. So now we've got this default event data callback that is implemented on utils right here, event listener. So when it calls, again, all the code right here, I'm going to skip over because this is all code you've seen before, just generified to be used for anything. In trigger, when we create the event, we use this get default event data. And as a default, in case a class does not implement its own default data, we just have one implemented right here, which just returns an empty object, so it still works. Otherwise, it calls, for example, that combat get default event data, which sends back, combat this, time now, player and opponent, I believe is the other two that it had. Let's see. Yeah, player and enemy. So that just comes in there now. That's the only thing we had to change there. And again, the rest of it is just copy pasted. So easy enough transition there. And now we can make anything in event listener with those parameters. So, whoops, Control Z. That was implemented for the demo. And then just like we did with the combat loop, I have a start and end of update. So at the start of the update loop, and yeah. So trigger events, start of update now. and trigger events end of update. So we got those two. And then we also have one for if the colony got resource, or if the colony's resources changed, which is resources modified, and if meeples have changed. So for example, if we use resources and got resources during the resource collection, then we trigger it here in the update loop. If any meeples died, then we trigger the meeples modified here. If any meeples were added, we would also, we haven't gotten to that point yet. Obviously we have the method, but I have not implemented up here yet because it hasn't become an issue. Point being though is that trigger event meeple modified rather right here would just include the new meeple added, or the new meeples plural, in case we had more than one, which is why I did not include it up here, because if we're adding more than one meeple, we want to only do one callback just to save time. So that is the next big thing that came out of the demo. Setting the demo up was setting up triggered events. Add and quit are pretty simple. So again, we already went over add, but quit is just toggle all buttons false, because we don't have the event loop implemented just yet, which is why the demo is not complete. But once we get the event loop implemented for the update loop, then we can go ahead and inside of finished demo also add in quit on the loop. So that is simple enough. So let me consult the GitHubs and see what else we got here. I modified some numbers in the colony.json. It's real little stuff, just changing the timers and stuff. Not that big of a deal. And where is my stream program? Because I feel like I'm about to sneeze. Alright, it's going away now that I'm mentioning it. Beautiful. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, that's the combat stuff I changed. No big deal. Demos. Obviously. Game. Did I change this? Oh, okay. Looks like I did change this. Yeah, okay. So we were not actually loading the colony before, so I went ahead and loaded colony here. So that's what I added there. Very simple. It's just basically a copy paste of up here. No big deal. Just that we have multiple, instead of having this.items, we have jobs and sectors. So we just split up jobs and sectors from the results in this then statement, or that then statement rather. So there we go. That change is simple, and it looks like I made a change down here somewhere. I just don't understand what GitHub is trying to tell me I changed right here. Yeah, I actually can't see. Oh, I see. Okay. So we changed this. Okay, so this used to be this dot equip for equipment, and I changed that over to items because again we modified equipment and changed it to items.json, right? And we load items with IO. Up here, all the way at the top. Load items. So this is now load items instead of equipment. So I came in here in games and modified all references to this dot equip to this dot items. That's what that changes. Let's see. Other changes. I'm trying to figure out what. So did we have this last time? So add resources. Line 72. This code right here it's saying is all here. I kind of thought, actually all the way down to add meeple. I kind of thought we had that last time, but I guess we didn't. So add resources is a shorthand to make sure that when we're adding resources, we start out with 0 and then add to 0. So first off, it makes sure that so if we just pass in a resource, so let's say you pick up 10 teeth, for example, in a dark room. So that is a resource with the resource type attached and a quantity already. So in that case, you don't have to pass quantity. So if you don't pass quantity right here, if you don't pass quantity, and we just steal the quantity off of the resource because it has resource type, which means that it's a resource object. So we can just steal quantity off of it. And then we set the resource dot quantity to 0 just so you can't exploit it. And then down here, if the resources is not yet recorded in our resources list, in our resources array, we just default it to 0. And obviously just add it afterwards. So that's just some code to make it a bit easier and straightforward to add inventory. And then add Meeple, obviously just create a Meeple. I already went over this earlier. So let's see what else. I did the events. We talked about that. Oh, I made a minor error down here. Right here. Or no, right. Where is minus equals? Right down here. So this used to be dot quantity, treating this as an actual resource instead of a resource type. So that was an error. Or actually treating the object at that array index rather as a resource rather than a quantity, rather than a number. So that was an error that got fixed, and looks like I did the same thing further down on add resources. Which back to is probably left over from when I changed it from an object. It used to be an object, right? And I changed it over to an array to make it easier. So, or actually no, it wasn't an array. It was an array before. It just everything was not at its ID index. That's what it was. So everything was set up otherwise. And down here, we are now returning resources and then meeples. That way we can send it back to the event. And it looks like that's about it. I have a couple more errors where I was referring to resource objects instead of resource instead of the this.resources index variable, the number. So that is that. This is important. This is probably the last important one. Let me just double check before I say that. Okay, yeah, this is the last big one. So this should be the last one we're ending off on. All right. Before we hit the last big one, over in IO, the minor one that I'm gonna just very quick breeze over, we added load colony, so you can load the colony.json file, and then you'll notice this parse standard JSON. I made a reference to this in a previous talk, that since we had so much repeated code, we really could just reduce it down to a function, and I didn't really give a good reason why we shouldn't, and therefore I did. So this is just generically, we take our data object, which would be data.weapons, data.armor, whatever it is, and then the object that we're going to be turning it into, so weapon type, armor, etc. And it just goes through, adds an ID to everything, and pushes it out to an output object with instance from JSON in there. So again, that is just a streamline. Makes things easier. The only thing that is not following that is the items, because they have callbacks. So that is that. Everything that could be converted to parse standard JSON was. And that makes our life easier in the future. So that was all the updates. Again, sorry for being a bit stiffly and probably a little not sounding too great otherwise audio-wise, just because the allergies, again, are killing me. But hopefully I'll be past this, and I do plan on picking up some allergy medicine, which I was hoping to get away with not getting this year, because it takes me forever to get through allergy medicine, because it's only like 2 weeks in a year that I have to suffer through it. But this is pretty bad, so I'll pick some up. Otherwise, we will finish off the demo during the next session. That should be easy enough. And then once we have that done, then we're setting up our sectors. We're doing our traps, quote unquote, our traps and houses. So that is, yep, that's it on the chopping block. So if you've been watching, thank you, and I hope you have a great, wonderful day, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're at in the world. And I will catch you next time.